Hey guys, welcome to the I Hope to Hear This podcast. Today I have with me first time guest Jason Kim. He's been at my church for a little bit now, so we've been getting to know each other and just hearing about his life. It was fascinating to hear all the twists and turns that happened mostly in his professional life and all the different fields and jobs he's dabbled in and kind of how all of that through all of that, he's seen God working in his life. So, yeah, it's a really interesting conversation, interesting story. So I hope you enjoy. How are you, Jason?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. I'm great. For those of you who don't know, Jason is a member at my church. We are part of the same small group, and we've been getting to know each other. And you have a very interesting life, I want to say. Like, just kind of the things
that's a nice way to put it.
Yeah. Just actually, not only is your life, like what little I know of it so far, not only is that interesting, but I also think the way you think is very interesting too. So yeah, I was excited to get on the pod and talk to you a little bit about it. So thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So do you want to just give a brief background, who you are, where you're from, and kind of what you're up to now, and then we'll work our way back to.
Okay. When you ask me a question like that, it's like how far should I go back?
I think it's informative to see what decision you make. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah. So
Cool.
just have at it.
Say the question one more time.
Just a brief background of who you are.
Brief background. Let's see. I was born in New York. I grew up in Korea for a few years when I was a kid. Came back to Long Island where I grew up most of my young adulthood. Went to upstate New York for college. Came down here post-college. Went to law school. Did a bunch of random jobs.
So what did you study undergrad?
Undergrad. So there's like this pattern of me trying a little bit of everything at any point in my life. So even for my undergrad, I pretty much tried every single major under the sun.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I started off with pre-med, which quickly fizzled out. I went to engineering school within my school, the engineering portion of it. Didn't go as well as I thought it would. I think for the engineering, I might have stuck through it if I was there from the beginning, but because I kind of joined awkwardly in the middle, it was kind of like caught off guard. I tried like philosophy and I tried economics. I think political science. And then I eventually just ended up with English just out of convenience. But ironically enough, that's where I had the most fun. But also ironically, not the literature portions. Mainly the creative writing and those like analytical classes, kind of like horror, history, and film, or like Asian foods or something. Like some random classes that kind of explored like thought processes and like kind of and like seeing things and analyzing things. Like that kind of stuff I really enjoyed. Which is kind of funny because before I got into college, I got to college through my math score from the SAT purely. Because I had a near perfect math score, but my English was atrocious. I was like sub 600, not even for English. But I somehow graduated with an English degree, and then I went to law school after. So
that is interesting. When you because the majors you listed, philosophy, economics, and English, those aren't that unpopular for like pre-law, right? Like people, I hear a lot of people diving into those majors and then going to law school with like the intention of going to law school.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what pre-law is like exactly. I mean, I think I even took law and ethics class, but I think at that point in my life, I was completely outside the scope of that kind of realm. So like, I always kind of like reflect back on where I was and where I am now, and the way I grew up is almost kind of like, I don't know how to say, almost like a blank slate that just filled up little by little. So it was always hard for me to kind of like know, oh, this is what I want to do. This is the track I want to go on. It was more like, oh, I need to learn this, this, and this. I want to experience this, that, and that, because I don't know anything about it to even know, like, well, where do I want to go? Like, what do I want to learn? So I think that's why I always had a hard time just settling with one thing. And I just like pretty much ended up trying almost everything.
Yeah.
And
to your point, having like a high math score and then going into like English and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That is like a pivot in and of itself.
Yeah. I think that mainly came from, I think, me being kind of tired of math. Like after having studied so hard, like my brain kind of like imploded on itself. I just didn't want to look at a math problem ever again after SAT. And then somehow pivoted, because the main reason I was good with math and wanted to go into Georgia Tech at first was for the architecture program. But yeah, all of that just kind of, for some reason, just fizzled out. I was just like, I just didn't want to have it. And I was just kind of curious about like, well, I kind of want to discover myself. So, which is why I ended up at Binghamton, which was a liberal arts school at the time. But now it's transformed again. It started off with engineering, went to liberal arts. And now it's mainly economics focused and business school. They're expanding to law school too, funny enough. But yeah.
And for those of the listeners who, I'm assuming most of my listeners are in Atlanta. And when you and your wife Susanna were explaining kind of what Long Island was, I had no idea. Like, I just hear like I think literally the most familiarity I have with Long Island is like Long Island iced tea, and like that's it. So like, what kind of place is Long Island? Is it an actual island? Or?
Yeah, it is an actual island. It is. I forget what the technical term was, but I guess you can call it an island. I mean, it's water on all sides. It's connected to the main body of New York. If you look at the map, it looks like a big fish almost. But Long Island was pretty much. Have you ever watched like Parks and Rec? If you imagine Eagleton in real life, that's pretty much what like some parts of Long Island feel.
Oh,
like.
Interesting. Like rich.
Yeah, there's like a lot of the well-off people who lived in Long Island and mainly commuted into the city to work, or they had their own practices because the majority of them were lawyers and doctors.
Oh, so Long Island's not like the city. Is it more like suburby?
Yeah, I guess you can consider it a suburb of the New York.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, Jersey probably wants to think of themselves as a suburb of New York, but Long Island is the true suburb of the New Yorks. But what was I saying? Yeah, so mainly, so there was actually one point I remember hearing how Long Island wanted to declare themselves their own like state or region.
Oh, interesting.
So I was like, man, you guys are really acting like Eagletonians right now. I was like, but that's the kind of place I grew up in. Predominantly Jewish community. There were a lot of Greeks as well, and Italians. So it's kind of like the well-to-do version of like Gangs of New York.
Oh yeah, what a great movie.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
So were there many Asians around when you were growing up?
Not at first. When I first came back to the States after having lived in Korea, I think I was like one of like 3 Koreans or in any Asians period, and in my elementary school. But that pretty much exploded once all the Koreans and Chinese who settled in Queens started to, earn more money, and then they moved out to the better parts of Long Island. Queens is still part of Long Island, but it's kind of like the halfway point where it's like not the nicest, not the worst. Well, I guess debatable, but a lot of them started to kind of trend towards Long Island, kind of like how Korean community started off in Beaufort and started trending upwards to Johns Creek.
Right.
That's exactly what happened from Queens out to like Nassau County area.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. I guess that's because I was just gonna mention as you were describing that, like that sounds just like Atlanta, where we were more down south, and as the Asian community started getting more affluent, it started kind of moving up.
Except in Long Island, it was from west to east. So a lot of the Koreans started like that, and then majority of them moved down to Georgia, and then settled here once they saw post Olympics how nice Georgia was, and compared to like New York, California is like stupid affordable. So
Right.
there was that whole like exodus from New York coming down to Georgia at one point. A lot of my parents, friends, and families, they all moved down here at one point.
When was that?
I think that explosion was it's like between '04 and '08.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I came here in '08, if I recall right. Yeah, '04 was high school and '08 was college. Yeah, so that's right around the time when everyone was migrating down to Georgia.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because when I came here in 2000, like the Korean, I mean, there were a fair bit of Koreans and Asians, but the real explosion didn't happen like maybe 5, 10 years after.
Yeah,
like
post Olympics.
So I mean, yeah, I guess it's much post Olympics, but like I remember back in 2001, there was like maybe like 1 or 2 Korean grocery stores in the area, but now there's like 8 of them, like all throughout kind of Metro Atlanta. Yeah, and they're like back then there were like small dinky places. Now they're like really big H Marts and Ashis. Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean Georgia has pretty much become the next big native Korean hub. I mean from what I know, like outpacing Georgia or California and New York at this point. I think a lot of Koreans come here before they go to New York or California these days.
So is that what made you? Because remind me, was it your parents that came to Georgia and that's why you applied to Georgia Tech? Or?
No, I applied to Georgia Tech because I had heard somewhere that Georgia Tech has a really good architecture program. It just coincidentally happened that my parents decided to move down. I just thought it was funny that I could have gone to Georgia Tech and been closer to home. But I guess it would have been a moot point anyway because I wanted to be away from home either way. So it kind of worked out.
Also, your parents are kind of part of that exodus of moving.
Yeah. My dad is the one, like the primary cause of moving around so much. Like, I think we moved maybe about 3 or 4 times, even while we were in Long Island. Once he moved down here,
like within the island.
Within the neighborhood, like within the neighboring area. Basically, just he was just doing the whole keeping up with the Joneses, going from next house to next house. And then once it got to the point where he made a lot of money selling the house because the property values were ridiculous, he'd take all that money. He came down here and then like semi-retire for a minute, and then just settled down here for a while. And then he moved out to Arizona, and then to California, closer to Nevada, and then he's out in he was down in Texas for a minute, and now he's out in Korea. So my dad, I think it's because he just doesn't like to stay in one place. But I don't know if it's because of age or convenience, but I think he's pretty happy with Korea at the moment. So, which I'm kind of glad for since. Our parents are only getting older, so if they get more used to it there, it's probably an easier transition to having some care or help or something like that. Although I kind of do want them to be around closer to our family, as time goes on. But I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah. That's the question I ask my parents all the time. Is, well, for me, my brother lives in Korea, so they actually have. It's easier for them to be in one country or the other. Like my mom. Last year, she was only here for 8 of the 12 months, and for 4 of them, she was in Korea with my brother. Well, not with him the whole time, but she has other family there too. And so it's always interesting to think about the parents of immigrants. I guess the original first generation immigrants. It's almost kind of sad to see that they don't fully make America their home. For us, for me, I don't think I could go move to Korea. America feels more home than Korea, but there are big populations. I think I might be generalizing, but there are definitely people who from the first generation Koreans or first generation immigrants that kind of go back to their homeland and they feel more comfortable there, primarily because of language. So it's interesting to see our parents' generation navigating that right now in real time. Because I know several friends whose parents are kind of hopping back and forth from Korea and America, and it's just interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's just a language thing either. Just because they got by. I mean, I tried my hand at a business for a minute, last year, as you know. But I mean, as I was experiencing it, I was like, I was very in awe of how they got by successfully being business owners, not even being able to speak the language. Me, a fully American, born and raised, struggling to run a business. How did they do? I don't understand.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Let's get back to that. Let's go back to after you hopped around a few majors, you went to law school. Was that the step, or was there something in between?
So yeah, I graduated from college, came down here because my family was down here. Pretty much uprooted my life that I spent the 4 years spending with my friends. So that was a moment for me in a transition, having to pretty much almost restart myself socially and functionally. But so I kind of lolled around a bit, and then I was like, oh, I got to do something. So I actually got my realtor's license.
That's right. Yeah.
But at that point, I was still very green and had no idea how, I guess, functionally speaking, how transactions and kind of like life just worked. So it didn't really click for me. Like, I had the brains, obviously, to get stuff, but I didn't know what to do with it once I got the license. I mean, now it's like I kind of regret it. If I had my experience now and going back, I definitely would have been, able to stick it through. But that didn't really amount to much. And then after that, I actually went to law school because while I was getting my realtor's license, I was actually enjoying the portions where they're talking about the statutes and the ethical codes and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that was pretty, actually, that was fun. And then it kind of stuck around in my head for a minute. And then I think a part of it was like my own intrigue, and part of it was like trying to fulfill this whole like, my parents' pride and joy in me kind of aspect as well. So I was like, why don't I try and see if I could make it in law school? And so I just barely got in. And it was John Marshall Law School that I got into. So that was kind of like a low-hanging fruit of the law school, sadly. They were accredited, so they were legit, but they were 100% for-profit, which ended up being a blessing in disguise because of all the civil lawsuits that happened, and that's how I got my debt written off by the government. So it was a very blessing moment, yeah.
Wait, so what happened?
So I came out of law school, skipping forward a little bit. So I came out of law school with the debt the size of a house, So I always stressed out about, I'm never going to be able to buy anything or do anything. And, I always stressed about it and prayed about it on times. And eventually, I think, God decided to be merciful and just allow things to happen in a way where the government just wrote off my entire debt, because they found that John Marshall was part of, like this whole list of schools that were kind of taking advantage of the financial program that the government was providing. So, so I was very blessed and lucky to have that written off. I think that happened right as things were kind of firing up. And then I don't remember who was in office at that time, but that was being shut down pretty much immediately. So like in that short window where their government was actually taking action for people, I squeezed through, and my entire debt was written off.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so
wow.
So I have an expensive piece of paper in my house that I don't do anything with.
But you got it for free? kind of.
Oh
wow. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. And then so let's say if you decided you wanted to go back to real estate or pursue like law, would that be something that you could kind of step back into, or?
You can't really step back into it. Both of them would require me to study for and attain the proper license. So, like I got through law school and I probably could have done it, but because I was so unmotivated by the end of it, I was so jaded going through 3 years of law school and seeing the how the sausage is being made, so to speak. And there are definitely good people out there who try to help and do a good job, because the main, and it's kind of silly, and again I think a lot of it had to do with my naivete in getting into a lot of these things. But I got into law school with the idea like, oh, no one's above the law, I can help people, and the whole like, I don't know if you ever watched Civil Action, but that was like my romanticism of like what legal career was like. Civil Action was about a toxic tort case, and this guy like basically like a David and Goliath story. So that off the back of that romanticism, on top of everything else, I went to law school and then found out that pretty much, I mean, I'm kind of overly generalizing here, but the legal profession is all about turning people's misery into a commodity and service. So, I mean, it's a little harsh for me to say that, but that's just the way it felt in my heart. So it kind of really turned me off, because I'm very pro like, oh, I like it when I help people and end up providing a positive into someone's life. And yeah, I could have done that, but just everything, there's like this whole joke about how attorneys become alcoholics and drug addicts for a reason, because they're going through so much misery just through the profession. I think they were like probably like close to being suicidal after like dentists or something like that. Something crazy. Like, I guess depending on the profession or the field that you go into, because even within the career, there's like a myriad of different things you can go into. So, but yeah, I mean, again, overly generalizing a little bit, but my heart wasn't really set in there. So I tried to pass the bar, but I just couldn't sit down and study properly, because I was so like, why am I even doing this? So yeah.
So then would you have to, you if you wanted to, right? Then you can just go take the bar, right? Like since you already have your law degree.
There's like I think if I recall, there's like a refresher phase you have to go through.
I see.
Pretty much have to go through a boot camp almost of refreshing yourself of everything. I think there was a fellow member of my previous church who actually did that. He was in a similar position as me, kind of stopped for a while, but out of necessity to provide for his family, he ended up, dusting off his degree and getting back into doing it, and he actually pulled it off. So, it's very, kudos to him. But yeah, if I ever really wanted to, technically I could do the same thing, where I have a degree, so I'm eligible to sit. I just need to go through the ethics portion and just pretty much study my butt off until I pass it. Right. But not really interested right now.
Sure. Yeah. No. It's just because you were saying how it's like a expensive piece of paper that you're not doing anything with.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's not saying that you must, but there's potential if you ever caught the bug again and said, "Oh,
yeah."
I mean,
I know now that I'm sitting here talking about it, I feel kind of like a little bit like, oh, this guy who has like options and he's like not doing anything with it. But yeah, if I wanted to, I do kind of toy around with the idea, because when these little bugs come up and bite me, and it's like, oh, that was kind of fun and maybe interesting, but not enough for me to try to do it again.
Sure.
Yeah. It's not in this phase of my life, just because I'm more tired of. I've experienced so much. I'm so tired of it. So I'm just like, I just want to make consistent income and just provide for my family. Maybe once the kids are, when they're adults and out, then maybe I might start to wander again and think about things. But right now, the consistency is more important. And I've had my fill of getting to experience a lot of things. Even in the past few years, thankfully Susanna was very supportive of all my decisions. I mean, even when I was with her, I started off with insurance. I went into financial advisory, and then I went into web development, and then I went back in, and then I did the produce store. And then I went back into insurance.
So let's I want to step through those one at a time. So you finish law school, and then you decide you don't want to pursue law. Yeah. Then do you go right into like insurance?
Nope.
What do you go to first?
I pretty much became a failure to launch. So I was with my parents, and I was just, being peksu, you know, as in Korean.
Unemployed.
Yeah, just kind of living with parents, just doing whatever and helping out the store because they still had the store at the time.
Oh, what kind of store did they have?
Oh, they were tried and true cleaners owners since day one of American Lifestyle. So they had done it for well over 30 years at that point.
So was this in Long Island or?
Yeah, they started off in Long Island.
And then they moved their business to Georgia?
Yeah, he didn't. My dad didn't intend to. It was a bad investment he made with all the money that he brought from New York. There's a development company that kind of, you know, screwed him over. So he lost a lot of money. So he kind of had no choice but to start up another store. Plus now he's watching his oldest son just being like the way he is. He tried to think of ideas to help me out, and he tossing around ideas about maybe starting a business together, like, you know, liquor store or something. Which in hindsight, which would have been awesome, after having known everything, if I had received the know-how and the help from my dad, I probably would have been very successful. But man, it's just when you're at that phase in your life when you're just like so blocked by like, I don't want to be like my parents, I want to do my own thing. It's just so stupid at the end of the day. But
well, advice for the younger listeners out there: if you're in that phase of, I want to get away from my parents, I don't want to do what they tell me, you might want to reconsider.
Yeah, I mean, we could even talk about that and advise whoever, but it's really unfortunate. But you just won't know until you know.
Sure.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. One of those things, like, can say it till you're blue in the face to younger generations, but I mean, we were there too. It's just impossible to hear and see until it's too late. I mean, I guess, you know, hopefully if there is one or two listeners who are lucky enough to be able to kind of realize, you know, it'd be a blessing for them. But man, if I could turn back the clock, I would have jumped at the opportunity. I would have even taken over as cleaners. Shoot. But yeah, at this point, I mean, what's been done is done. So,
but so then you're kind of not doing anything, and then what makes you get into is insurance the next thing?
Oh, right. No, that was insurance was a completely random decision because I had met Susanna.
Oh,
I met Susanna, and I decided, hey, I now have somebody who I really might see myself with. I need to get a job. So I just started to troll the web, you know, like Indeed, ZipRecruiter, looking for any job. And then the insurance gig came up. My current boss, actually, who was my then boss, my first insurance boss, he was with State Farm back then. He had posted a listing, and I just went. I was like, you know what? I tried to do something salesy before with the realtor license. Maybe I can try it again, see how it goes. I mean, insurance can't be that bad. I mean, you just sit at the office. I don't have to run around showing houses or anything, right? So I just went, and then, you know, we chit-chatted and kind of, you know, we hit it off, and he liked me, obviously, so he hired me. And then I got my licenses. So again, like, I guess I just have a knack for taking tests. When I want to pass it, I'll pass it, basically. So I got the licenses, and I started the whole track. And yeah, that's pretty much how I got into it, just purely for my future self, to provide for a family.
No, that's a great motivator. I mean, you know how you were saying, like, how did your parents do it without, like, even the culture or the language?
Yeah.
I'm sure it was that drive of, I need to provide for my family.
Yeah. I mean, now that you mention it, I mean, although I still think it's crazy how they did it without being able to speak the language, like figuring out how to talk to the state's offices, getting licenses and all that. And I was like, okay. Like, I'm having trouble wrapping my head around that. I have to use somebody for it.
Right.
So, my gosh. But
yeah, my dad was recently telling me a story about, like, his dealings, because he runs a business, and, you know, there are always customers that, you know, they'll take something on credit and then not pay back. And there are people like that, like, in the business world. So my dad was telling me about how, like, oh, this is a new year. I'm gonna contact one of them and just like kind of like extend an olive branch. Like instead of getting mad that they didn't pay me back, I'll just say something like, no, just pay me like half of what you owe me, and then let's do a fresh start this year. And as he was explaining this, I was like, surely this is a Korean customer because like his English is very limited. And I was like, so this was a Korean guy you were emailing? He goes, no, they're like this Mexican company. And we're like, how did you do this? And he was just like, just the subject line of the email was new start. And then like apparently he just kind of like in this broken English kind of just hobbled words together. And then he like the guy was grateful. So and this was last year, the beginning of 2024. The guy was grateful and he paid the half of the thing that he owed, and then he's still a customer now. So like he was telling us this story to just kind of like the life lesson was in Korean he said, I realized that life is all about how you turn disaster into opportunity. And he was just kind of like imparting that wisdom on us. But for me, I was like, how do you do this even like without knowing any of the language? But they just kind of find a way. And like I guess the term where there's a will, there's a way kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like my dad just he just needed to get things done, and he did it, which is really fascinating, right? Yeah.
What type of business does your dad run?
He does casters, like the like small wheels that you see on like carts and things like that. They're like rubber wheels that you'll see on carts or like things that you roll around. So they're basically tiny, small wheels. Yeah.
So he makes wheels for carts?
He import and exports them.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah. He's been in that line of work since we came to America because of that. Like because he promised one of his friends in like college or something like that to help his dad run his business or something like that. Yeah.
I don't even know how you even find clientele or get into that type of business.
Yeah, it's
very interesting.
It is very interesting because I would think like how much demand is there for that out there, but
apparently there's a lot.
Apparently there's a lot.
I guess there's wheels on everything.
Yeah. When did we tell you about Shirley's bubble tea business that she ran for a little bit?
No.
Oh yeah, so Shirley ran a little bubble tea pop up called Soft Tea, and she built a cart. Like
I remember the cart.
Yeah,
I didn't know that was for a business.
Yeah, that was for bubble tea, and the wheels that are on it were from my dad. Yeah, my dad he just gifted it to us. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, anyways, kind of going back to it. So you kind of out of necessity after meeting your now wife Susanna, you decided you needed to get a job, so you got into that. And then what made you jump to financial advising?
So I saw, so whenever I think about and do things, the way my mind works is I see the interconnections between, across whether it's, from board game to board game, from job to job, or like, technique to technique. I see the overlying, like the structure. So the way I saw it, financial advisory was just a fancier version of insurance sales, because you're talking to people about, talking to providing a service for a need. And for financial advisory, it's going to be almost always affluent people who have money, because otherwise they're probably not talking to financial advisors. So it was just a glitz and glamour. I was like, because there was like a couple of times as I was doing insurance, some customers would offhandedly ask me about, oh, do you do like insurance advisor? Because, I know why, because the top came up from some of these customers because State Farm pushed heavily on life insurance products that tracks the market. So there was like a kind of like the slight overlay of insurance and finances. So it's kind of funny how it was like real estate overlay from the realtor to the law to. And anyways, so yeah, that kind of always piqued my interest. But I was fine with State Farm, but it wasn't until I guess now blessing in disguise when State Farm conducted a witch hunt. I can go into a whole nother rabbit hole about what happened then. But State Farm had like a witch hunt, and they kicked out a lot of agents. So how State Farm is structured is State Farm is pretty much the mob boss, and then under the State Farm umbrella are all these agency offices. These agents are their employees essentially, and then under these agents then hire people to work in their offices. So everything goes up to State Farm. So and State Farm turned a blind eye to all these shady practices that some of these agents and agency offices were doing. Until one day they decided, okay, it's time to clean house. They kicked out a lot of people, and a lot of people like myself were caught in the middle of it too and were unjustly fired.
Oh my gosh.
So it was quite kind of a shame because I saw myself, I drank that Kool-Aid and I was like, State Farm's the best, I'm going to be here for a while. But yeah, I mean, they kicked me out. So I was like, okay, cool. You know what? I guess I'm gonna, now I'm gonna try to pursue the whole financial advisory thing, and I just kind of Googled around, and then I kind of came across this program with Merrill Lynch, one of the most well-known names in financial advisory, and they had a what they call the FADP program, and I got in, and by that point I had gained enough sales training and experience to be able to sell myself. So I sold myself to the guy who hired me, and then I got into it. I super enjoyed it. I guess a part of myself kind of really thrived on the whole like, oh, look at me, I'm going to a fancy office kind of thing. So I put on a suit, I go down to Midtown Atlanta and going up to like a however many floor building into a small cubicle in there. And they're paying me obscene amount of money. Well, I guess then obscene amount. I mean, I guess it's obscene compared to most average salaries. It was about like, I think it was like 60 or 70K just to study for the series exams.
Oh, wow. I
wasn't even working. I was studying within the program and they were paying me that much. It's crazy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that just speaks to how much money they make.
Yeah.
But so I was enjoying that lifestyle. I passed Series 7 with flying colors, arguably the harder of the two exams that you need to pass, Series 6 and 66 and 7. 7 is the technical tests where they test you on like what types of all the different stocks options and derivatives, all those are, and how the market trends and what are the analysis of it. That's the way harder version compared to the Series 66, which is just the ethical, can you act professionally kind of test. It's still not easy, but it's nowhere near as hard because it's not technical like the Series 7. But right between Series 7 and 66, COVID happened.
Oh my gosh.
So I didn't think that would affect me much. I thought I was going to finish taking out the test and then, enjoy it, because right before that happened, Merrill hosted their Christmas party, and I was like, wow, yeah, this is the experience. They rented out the entire floor, like the top level of a building. They had like tons of like amazing food, and everyone was dressed up. So yeah, I was like enjoying that life, and all of a sudden the next month literally crashed down to the rock bottom. I'm not putting on a suit. I'm waking up every morning in freaking shorts and t-shirt. Doesn't even feel like I have a real job. I think that's when I realized, man, I think like putting on a suit, going to the office really affects me mentally. Like, cause like I was like quickly becoming demotivated, to the point where I couldn't pass the 66, the easier of the two exams. So it was a disappointment to myself. I felt bad for my boss who hired me, because he was a really good guy. But at that point, I just like degraded all the way back to like, pretty much like a caveman status, and I was like, ugh. And it really took a toll on me mentally. But for all it's worth, Merrill Lynch, Bank of America, because they're one and the same now, ever since the financial meltdown, they have a bridge for people like me who, clearly have the capabilities. So you almost kind of like, they don't like to fire people because they hired people for a reason, and they like to prove the fact that, oh, we hired you for a reason. So they didn't outright fire me. Instead, they gave me an opportunity to work in the Bank of America sector, in the banking sector. So I kind of did that for a bit, and then tried to trend towards the sales end of banking, which is the bank advisor. So I was kind of getting there, and then I was slowly starting to enjoy office life again. I mean, not as fancy as the financial advisory, but it was still, step back into it. But right between then, coming out of COVID and going slowly back into that lifestyle, because I was at home so often, like, I don't know why, but I started to really think about, like, you know what, maybe I kind of want to do something I enjoyed doing, something that I was really good at doing. I mean, I grew up pretty much since high school on computer. So I thought, hey, I wonder what it would be like to be a developer. So I took a boot camp. And then I got through it, and then
Was it the one that they have at Pond City Market?
No, I did it. So I didn't know at the time that these were all like convoluted, like they use third parties or whatever. But it was the one that was supposed to be, quote unquote, led by Georgia Tech, but obviously it was like third party, vendors or whatever providing all these people. But yeah, so I did it through Georgia Tech, I guess. And then that's where I found the program through their I guess whatever I guess whatever section they had in the school that led that program. I don't even think I met a single person who actually was part of Georgia Tech staff, so I'm pretty sure it wasn't led by Georgia Tech. But yeah, so I actually enjoyed that very much. So I thought I was going to do well, and I was doing well. But I didn't realize how badly imposter syndrome would get me. Like, people kept on talking to me. I'm sure you experienced it day in, day out. Sure. But, the people kept telling me, oh, you're supposed to be like, you're just supposed to be like that. You're supposed to experience that. I was like, this is miserable. It's like, I don't like feeling like I don't know something. I thrive on the fact that I know something and I can teach people, So I kind of floated on by, even at start, how it is, you get paid pretty decently. They give you a fancy laptop and they have a command center if you ever want to go into the office and work. So I was kind of enjoying that, I mean, I grew up pretty much a gamer, so, I know all about that lifestyle, spending time on the computer. So I was doing that for a minute, and then it started to feel extremely menial, and I didn't like the people I was working with either, because some of the people in the leadership were very, like, throwing around their way, like, look at me, nothing will get done without me kind of attitude. So that didn't really jive with me too well. I mean, it was to the point where the guy that was like the hiring manager, the guy who hired me, and when I was doing my exit interview, he was acting like extremely unprofessional. And then in the moment, I was like, I couldn't process. I was like, wait, is this really happening? Am I interpreting what you're saying correctly? He's basically saying that he showed up just to like tell me off, like towards the end of it all. He didn't have to come and talk to me, but he showed up in the meeting just to tell me off. Wow. I was like, okay, cool. But that's the kind of person he was. Yeah, so I kind of got out of that, and then right around that point, I was kind of fiddling with the idea of like, what, maybe I just go back into insurance, or maybe I try to ask for my job back at Merrill Lynch, But right around that time, as I was coming out of it, I was kind of thinking, but you know what? Maybe I want to try a business. And then this opportunity just fell into our lap. My in-laws were helping in the search too, because when it comes to business, it probably would have been easier to transition into a Korean-run business, I guess. There was this like very ambiguous listing about what the store was. It's like when Susanna's mom was describing it to me at first, they read it as like, oh, this is a government building, and it's like a small small like convenience stand like in the building. So I was like imagining, oh, nice office government workers, and it's probably like first floor. They stop by to pick up coffee or whatever. That's what I was imagining. And it's actually a stall in Pond City Market. I don't know if you've ever been to Pond City Market. Yeah. Is a full on grocery store in Pond City Market.
Oh, interesting.
So when we first showed up, we're like, "There's no way I'm gonna do this. This is crazy." But then for some reason, it just like caught my attention, and I was like, "You know what? I think I could actually do this." I mean, that was a little bit of hubris and naivete at that point, which was the worst combination, because I have to say it was probably the biggest mistake of my life. I mean,
so it was like a produce grocery store stall was it near like in the food court, or?
So I eventually learned, but what happened is it started off as a very good thing, like all the way back, since the Great Fire, Gone with the Wind. The city has set up that area to provide for, people who had no means. So it was a government provided area. So a lot of food stamp customers is just to provide meats and vegetables and fruits, produce and meats basically for people who can't afford it. So actually it's kind of funny, like some of these people are eating better quality food than a lot of people who pay a lot of money because we got a lot of our stuff from distributors directly. So it's not stuff that's been sitting in Publix, it's the stuff that Publix orders to put on their shelves. So but anyways, so it's like I see all those pictures hanging on the walls, showing the history of the place, but it started off that way. But what had happened was over time, the area was adapting, and then one stall, there's three of each, and there are three produce stores, well, not two since mine flopped. Three produce stores, three meat vendors, all coexisting somehow, all thriving well because they survived off the food stamps. And food stamp is guaranteed money, basically. But then I think, I can't remember the exact history, but one of the stalls decided to start to sell goods, not just produce. So what they would do is they would literally troll like, H Mart or Ashi or Namdaemun especially. And then they would just bring it down to the store and sell it at a profit.
Oh, wow.
So that's how it became a quote-unquote grocery store. On lease, on paper, where you're not supposed to do that. On paper, it's just supposed to be for produce because it's supposed to be for food stamp to be used for natural foods. But some vendors saw the loophole and took advantage of it, and then the other two had to keep up with it to, attract customers. So it eventually all three of them became like pseudo grocery stores. Almost, when it was not even sanctioned to be one, which became a huge political issue when this new guy came in that eventually caused the demise of my store, and eventually I probably the rest of them, because there's this whole like political thing back and there's a part of it is attributed to my inexperience, although by a certain point I got good enough and understood the crowd well enough to succeed. But by that time it was too late. But what I mean by that is not too late as in I couldn't, make it back enough. It was too late in the terms that the guy that had replaced the previous market manager, because she had passed away from COVID, the guy who showed up, he was a straw man put into the market by someone in the mayor's office to pretty much gentrify the area. And I was just telling you, the markets and the vendors thrive off of food stamps. And you know what happens when gentrification happens? You don't have food stamps anymore.
Right.
You can't just on a dime switch into a mode where it supports a completely different crowd, a worldly different crowd. So at that point, there was no way that three of each is going to survive. I feel bad for people who are still running their stores there. People who have been there longer than I have, like decades. They're literally family businesses. So eventually, they're all gonna have to figure it out, and it's gonna boil down to one each. Um, but yeah, it was very awkward or like very unfair. But I mean, I don't know. So that's why I kind of consider it my biggest mistake. But
Mm.
it was just like a culmination of like things I couldn't control.
Mm.
So I couldn't really be mad at anyone per se, because it wasn't anyone's like actual fault.
Mm.
I mean, I guess if somehow the previous owner knew it was gonna happen, but unless he had a crystal ball.
Right.
So it was like very unfortunate, and because I was the newest and most inexperienced, even though I was kind of getting my footing, there was no way I was gonna survive that transition. So that's what happened, and then eventually I had no choice but to shut it down. I couldn't even sell it because I was just, I was burning out my rope. It's like I had no more to burn, so I just had no choice but to just vacate. Like I couldn't even properly, do my things because I had no money and no means. So I, thankfully, again, by the grace of God, I just came out of it having avoided, something that could have been more disastrous. Like for all the talk that guy that was managing has, like he had no backbone, so he didn't really try to like pursue after me or like, hold me responsible or anything like that. Yeah, because right around the last the nail in the coffin is when one day the police came around and they kicked out all the homeless people in the area and cleaned it up.
Interesting.
And then you start to see all these, TV shows and movies being shot around that area like constantly. So it was already happening where it's like, it's putting a stranglehold on the homeless and the people who would, frequent the market. So, yeah, I mean, I immediately saw it. Like one day, you could clearly see there's a lot more like, the upper class people, like people I would never have seen coming around the stores and like trolling around. I'm like, where are these people coming from? So, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's how it slowly happened, and I got choked out basically.
How long did you do that?
I started in September of last year. The whole idea is hey, I'm selling the store, and Thanksgiving. Okay, so have you ever heard of like the term like the nut month or the nut year or something like that? Like, so the nut month for that area is basically the month where they make boatloads of money because of holiday season. It is. I've never seen anything like this. It is a war zone down there in Thanksgiving.
Oh wow.
Like you can't even get in there without having to wait like hours to park.
Wow.
So there's like line out the door and around the block type of deal, like sardines in the market for every stall. Because they're all there to pick up collard greens, mustard greens, all the three popular greens that African Americans enjoy: collard greens, mustard greens, and what was the third one? Kale.
Okay.
And then along with that, the meat, because word gets around and they know that we have the best because we get it from the distributors. You don't want to go to Publix to pick them up. You want the good stuff. And our main thing is one of the actually the previous owner at my vendor had learned by some blessing from one of the customers, because all they used to do is sell it in bunches. But then one lady one day was like, "Hey, could you cut these up for me and put it in a bag?" And then that's how it all started, where people were just the stall owners were cutting them into slices and bagging them and selling the bags. That became the item that we primarily sold, was prepared vegetables in bags. So large bags of collard greens and mustard greens and kale. So yeah, I can't remember why I came down this.
So
but
this was September.
Oh yeah.
2023 or 2024? Because this is 2025 now.
I've been here since I've been in office since 23. Yeah. So it's September of 23 until April of 24.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I got through Thanksgiving. I mean, Oh my god, it is crazy. I had to hire like 13 people to help me cut the greens.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's crazy. Non-stop cutting the entire day for like 2-3 days straight.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So that was fun.
Okay.
At that point, I made some money back. I made back some of the money from having experience starting the business. It was supposed to be enough to make me feel good, but it barely made me feel good. Because all that just went down the drain from the preceding months. Because it led into another holiday rush, but not as big as Thanksgiving. So I didn't know how to adjust the stop and go, how much the gas. So that was hard, and lost some money there. And then eventually the gentrification really started kicking into play. So it was just not good at all. But
wow.
so it was like September through March-ish, April. That's when I just kind of gave up. I was just like too much strain on my family, not even making any money really. On paper, I'm making money, but I'm not actually making money. I finally understood what that meant when business people say it. But business ownership is kind of structured in a way where unless you bend the rules and find the loopholes, it's impossible to profit. Like you have to figure out a way to, you just really need to figure out a way to kind of like weasel around and figure things out. And I don't even want to use the word weasel because it's almost necessity. So I feel bad, but so yeah, so that was interesting.
Wow. What a ride. And then was it after that you kind of got back into insurance?
Yeah, at that point, thankfully, my current boss, who was my first boss in insurance, he was tired of State Farm. He was really upset when they conducted the witch hunt and got rid of me and my coworker, who were the top two in the office. And he felt really bad for us. He was upset at State Farm, so he waited for his bonus check. Because State Farm isn't structured in a way where you profit based off of what you do. You profit based off of, getting good grades, basically. Oh, did you do well? Here's your money. That's how State Farm does it. So he waited for that you did well money, and then he took that and said, bye, I'm gone. He started his own agency. He went independent. He's like, forget it. I'm not doing captive agency anymore. That's what we call a captive agency, like State Farm, American Family, those people who only sell that product. Which is pretty much going to be a bygone thing. There's no way you can survive selling one product anymore. You have to shop around. So, but anyways, so he had started his office sometime between when I stopped and I started the business. So towards the end of it, he just randomly kind of got in contact with me. I guess he was looking to expand more, and he reached out to me. He was like, hey, do you ever think about it again? And I had always been, unlike my realtor's license, I have been, diligently paying my dues for it and doing my credits to retain my license.
For insurance?
Yeah, I don't know why. I just did. Like before, I wouldn't even have thought twice about it and just let it fizzle out. But for some reason, I just felt like I just wanted to. And thankfully, I did because when he came around asking, I was like, hey, this is an opportunity. Even if it's transitional, let me just, it's something that I know how to do. So yeah, I just got back in with him, and then it was rough readjusting, because independent agency life is a little different than captive agency life. There are some nuances, but I mean, at the end of the day, I did know how to do the job, so it worked out. I'm still learning a lot, still transitioning, and yeah, so that's how I got back into it. Just opportunity came around. I always get blessed with these opportunities.
Yeah.
So I'm very thankful.
What a ride, right? Like just all the different kind of things. But it's interesting because you at least walk away from whatever experience, whether it was good or bad, with experience, right? So like you can say you have experience with law, you have experience with like financial advising, you have experience with running a business.
I do have a lot of. I guess I'm the prototypical jack of all trades.
Yeah. Swiss Army man.
Yeah, Yeah, it's really weird how I have all these experiences, but yeah.
So how do you see like God's hand on all this? Or maybe it might be too early to tell. Or
Kind of, but not really. It's like I do see it, but kind of early to tell. It's like definitely. I think you were there when I shared it. I can't remember because I see you here and there now,
Yeah,
more
right.
often, so I can't remember where I shared this. But the events of me coming to Bahrain until now has been like the definition of God leading me somewhere. Never before I have ever thought that way. Before it was always, oh yeah, I do something and then off the back of it, it's like, oh, it's because God led me here. It's like I transition out and it's like, oh, it's because God didn't want me to be there or something. This was the first time where I just like randomly showed up. I was like, I'm just out of here, convenience. My kids get, free watch. I was like, whatever. I get to attend service. What is this Baptist thing about? Because I was basically a snobby Presbyterian. But God quickly tore that down. But yeah. So yeah, this has been the first time in my life where it's like, oh wow, God led me here. Like I'm really feeling it, and it just feels like. This is the real time. It just feels like I finally flipped the book and the next chapter. And it's like I'm passing through the door again, and I'm feeling a lot of His grace and what He's trying to teach me a lot more realistically, not just hearing and sitting in Sunday sermon, but like in a real way where it means something, almost to the point where whenever I read some verses that are, pretty well known, stuff like, trust in God and not lean on your own understanding. Before it was like, oh yeah, that's a nice message for me to hold into my heart. But now it's like when I read it, it's like I almost well up because it's like, oh, thank you God. This is so real to me. For some reason, it's just so real. And whenever I feel those moments, it makes me feel like God really has allowed me wisdom and discernment to be able to see and hear, like actually see and hear.
Oh, amen.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your whole story, like, sounds like a testimony in the making to me. You know what I mean? Like, it's like God, like I feel like God's doing something there. I don't know what it is, but it's just, I think sometimes God takes you to places where, because you need to be in that place to really experience Him. Like one thing, if someone said, take a guess at what Jason's story is gonna end up being like, I would say maybe like if it went like too easy for you and you stayed in one spot, maybe you would have gotten into that whole life of like wearing a suit and going to work every day and then living that high life and getting too consumed in that. And in that place, it's difficult to really become reliant on God because you become so reliant on self and like, the things of the world. So I mean that could be one possibility. God brought you to a place where He can say, okay, now you're ready to like really experience what I can do for you in your life, and that life isn't just about the things that you do for work, but really like looking towards me and glorifying me and communing with me.
Wow,
but,
you just put that into a whole perspective for me. That's exactly what happened, actually. Like, even when I was just talking about that whole office party, that Christmas party, all the way down to being wrung dry out of hard work, waking up at 3 a.m. every day, running down to the market, pretty much drained me of every inch of my soul and wrung me dry. And then I was empty enough. It makes sense. That's wow. That really put it into perspective.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, like the things that God takes us through. Like, I would say my story isn't like similar to yours at all. Like, I literally, like, I did well in math. I went to an engineering school, and to this day, my work is related to like my undergraduate
I'm
major.
very jealous.
No. It's a very different story, almost polar opposite from you. But like the way that I was brought to a place of really depending on God is like on the emotional and mental side, right? Like just like a lot of anxiety, a lot of worries, a lot of just what am I doing with my life? Like, is it right that I'm just on this kind of one track mind? Like, should I be diversifying, trying new things, stuff like that? And, just am I a good father? Like the whole imposter syndrome thing you talked about. Like, I was kind of wrung dry in that regard. And then kind of like I was able to better experience God and, like really just start saying, you know what, God, like it's obvious that I can't do this on my own. Like, so I'm just gonna have to rely on you, and like you gotta just help me. And so, I think it's a blessing in disguise, or maybe not even in disguise. It's a blessing when, like, you are kind of brought to a place where you are able to more readily experience God, and like accept the thing that He's kind of got in store for you. So yeah, I think your story is, I mean, it's way more ups and downs than I originally thought. It's so twists and turns left and right, but the really overarching a message of your story that's really encouraging to me is like there's like, first of all, like you can't, like it doesn't seem like people, I think there's a fear for people who have like 9 to 5s that like if you fail at one thing, then you're gonna like never get a job, and then you're gonna starve to death and die, like something like extreme that. But then like it's clear that there are a lot of things out there. It's not just the thing that you're used to, but as Christians especially, I think like you just never know how God is gonna use the things that we're going through for His glory, and to like kind of like fish us out of the belly of the beast, so to speak, like with Jonah, right? Yeah. So, thanks so much for sharing. Yeah. I genuinely, I can say, I was expecting for your story to be very like, oh, you did a lot of things, but I thought it was like just a few of the like, oh, law school, like, oh, the produce store and the insurance thing, but there's like way like different things in between.
Yeah. I actually forgot to mention that. And one more other thing, which was I was in the GOTV world.
What's GOTV?
Nonprofit organization, nonpartisan, get out the vote.
Oh.
Yeah, I work with Helen. I don't know if you know Helen Ho, but she ran Advancing Justice. Well, before it was called the Asian American Legal Advocacy Center.
Oh, wow.
Which it got absorbed into Advancing Justice, which is a national level organization. But yeah, I did that work too.
So even
I totally forgot about that.
add politics to the list of the things that you've dabbled
kind
in.
of politics adjacent, but yeah.
Oh wow. But yeah, the story is great, and just thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the creative writing thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to make sure I talk to you about this just a little bit. Have you ever thought about like writing something and then like putting it up on like Amazon or something?
I was kind of talking back and forth with Susanna about how. So in college, my friends and I, because that was like the real boom of YouTube, we put up like random music videos. Like we copied like the Pokemon intro video, or like we made our own Michael Jackson music video for like the senior banquet for our Christian group, stuff like that. So I always had this itching to like, oh, maybe I want to like start a channel or a podcast or write something, but I don't know what it is, but I don't know if it's just attributed to laziness or fear, because I don't really have much fear in putting my foot forward, clearly.
Yeah, clearly.
But I don't know why I never put myself out there into doing something like that. Because I did actually used to love share on my Zanga when Zanga was a thing.
Yeah, Zanga. That was like the original, social media.
Yeah, I share plenty on that thing. So I guess, I don't know. Maybe I will one day, but I may actually pick your brains about how you got into writing your own book.
I wrote a book. It says proof, right? So I made this. This is actually I actually made it smaller. I thought it was too big, and I wanted to make it a little thicker. But this is it's like I'm really into like world building stories, kind of.
Yeah.
So I wanted to write like a fantasy book. So this is what I envisioned as part one of the first book in the series of 3 books. So, with like the thing that was holding me back was like the cover. I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with the cover. Like, do I hire someone to make a picture for me, or like?
Thank you, generative AI.
That's exactly what I did.
I remember you telling me about that.
This is an AI image. So, I mean, like, I don't really like. It was just like something fun I wanted to do. Nothing too high pressure because like there's like zero investment. Like all these AI tools are free, and you don't have to pay to put this up on Amazon or anything like that.
How much does it cost to like make it like this though?
So it's built into the cost of buying it. So one of these books is $4.99, and when I sell it, I think I get like $2 off of that. Yeah. So the printing cost, I guess, is like $3 or so. Yeah.
Per book.
Mm-hmm.
And then you sell it for $5, and you make $2. Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting.
And so there's like zero risk to me. Like I don't have to bulk print or anything like that.
Oh, it just gets printed as needed.
As like Amazon will print it as needed. And
what the heck?
Yeah.
That's an amazing business model.
Yeah, the Amazon it's called Kindle Direct Publishing. I've heard of many smaller authors kind of get started on that. I mean, now obviously the market's saturated with little dinky books like mine because anyone can publish now. But it's just if you ever get that creative itch again, that's one of the things. This was like a creative itch for me. I just said, I kind of want to do it, and so I did it. So I have the second book ready, and I will say this: if I sell at least 10 copies of this first book, then I'll release the second one. Yeah, and then I'm writing the third one.
You just this isn't the book that you printed a while ago that you talked about, right?
It is. So this is like the
other one where it's like introvert.
Oh no, yeah.
Something.
I don't even know if I have a copy of that. Okay, but yeah, my original 2 books that I wrote was called the Awkward Introverts Party Survival Guide.
This is your actual first book.
This yeah. So like,
nice.
People who read my first book and then read this, hoping that it'll be the same same style, they're gonna be woefully disappointed because it's like so different. Like it's like not even.
I mean, this is a fiction, and the other book is kind of like a
how-to guide, like a
humorous slice of life kind of
humorous
deal.
how-to social guide. Yeah. So and the podcast too. Like I think, like for me, this is it started as a creative itch for me too, like that I wanted to scratch, and this is gonna end up being like episode 170 something.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's just I would say, but I will say this, like being a father, and I'm sure you know this very well. Being a father, it is hard to carve out time to do these certain things like this.
Yeah.
So we might be in a phase of life where our kids need to get older before we can dive into these things more so. But I would say the nice thing about technology these days is the investment to get into doing these things is not that high.
Yeah, I probably would be very interested in doing it if not for my limited time as a father being dedicated to Kindle.
Right. Yeah.
It's hard to replace that because I'll probably do that for life. So like you said, maybe I don't know, maybe I'll try like a page every week or something, just like a small goal.
Yeah.
Just to write something, but
yeah.
Thanks for your encouragement.
Yeah, of course. And it's an encouragement I extend to everybody who's listening. And Jason, thank you so much for stopping by, having this conversation. It was very, very enlightening. And very encouraging to hear kind of the things that you've gone through, and kind of seeing you on the other side of some of those challenges that you went through. because yeah, I think it is a testimony. It's a testament to how God really does work in our lives. Yeah.
I'm blessed that you could get such sentiments out of my story, and it was fun.
Yeah.
I appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah, of course. And thank you guys so much for listening. And we'll talk to you guys next time.